G'day friends, welcome to the stamping series videos. I'm going to go through some fun ways to play with the 4 stamp sets that I created and released in October. Now we're going to go through each stamp set, or we're going to pick apart the stamp sets, and I'm going to show you in a series of videos how to play with them because I couldn't figure everything out into one video. It would be super long, and I do want to go through things in real time just to give you all the tips, tricks and techniques that I can, and just show you some fun ways to play with them that maybe you haven't thought about, or maybe you've seen and you don't know how to get that effect. I just want to show you the ways that I like to incorporate them into my journals and just have fun playing with them. So I've got the 4 sets here. Today we're going to look at face base, and in particular we're going to look at this face right here, and we're going to do some abstract little art piece with it. Now I have some Canson watercolor paper here, and I've just cut it to a 4x6 because I don't need to do a whole spread to show you this. I've also got some VersaFine smoky gray ink. It says captures fine details like no other. Now inks are going to be total personal preference for you. I actually do like to work with water-soluble inks a lot of the time when I'm stamping, because I like when I go over with watercolor for those lines to disappear. A lot of the times I like to use the stamps as a blueprint for something else, as a jumping off point, as a starting point. Someone said the other day that I love that you use them like a blueprint, and I love that word for it because it's totally the way that I do think of them. They're just a starting point for you, and especially in this face base set where you can see a lot of them are just undecorated and ready for you to put your own little personal spin on. I do like to think of them as a blueprint, so I like to use water-soluble inks because that way it'll totally disappear and you'll never know that I used a stamp. But for the purposes of demonstrating, I'm going to use this VersaFine. It is a pigment ink, it's oil-based, so it's not going to react with the water, and I'm going to show you in a smoky gray because I don't want it with stark black because I want you to be able to see the lines I work over the top, but I also don't want to do it in a light color where you can't see. So I've just got my acrylic block and my stamp here. I actually like to press the stamp pad over the stamp like that and get it inked up nice and evenly. Half of this pad is a little dry, so sometimes I get this really beautiful ombre effect. Now I will say this, paper does matter when you're stamping. You want to apply even pressure. I feel like I'm not an expert on stamping, so I don't need to tell you all of that. But you'll see that when you're using a textured paper or something that is, you know, like a watercolor, sometimes ink will feather out a little bit, or sometimes you won't get a really crisp, clear impression like you would on a coated, smooth paper. So just take that into consideration. It's 9 times out of 10, it's not anything you're doing wrong. It's just the way that those mediums like to play with each other. So it's a lot of personal preference, but for the demonstration today, it's not going to matter. We're going to completely revamp this anyway. So I've just got a little pencil here. I don't even know if this... Does this really have a brand? I feel like this is the pencil that you get like in a pack from Target, but it's just a lead, so that's what I want to use today. I wanted a thick outline. Usually I'll go in with a mechanical pencil because it's a much finer detail, or sometimes just go straight in with pen if I'm feeling really, really confident. But today I'm just going to use this pencil. So we've got the face base down, and that's exactly why the stamp set's called face base, because they're just bases for you to work off of. Now I like to tilt my paper when I'm working, or my book, because I draw at kind of an angle, so to have it like this I find it a little awkward to draw. So just a tip, if it helps you to move your page around, remember to do that. Now let's just get really abstract with it. I like to work in abstract because I believe that it's really freeing, and if you're looking for a great place to start, you're not going to overthink a lot of stuff. So that's why I wanted this to be the first video, just to show you that getting really free, loose and wild with it is a good thing, and can really stimulate more of your creativity and help you figure out a lot of things for when you want to move into something a little bit more specific. So we've got this eye here on the left. We're actually going to draw this big leaf shape, and we're going to give her a massive eye coming off the side of her face. Now, I would recommend to do this in a really light ink because sometimes it can get a bit confusing to work with the lines underneath. I've done this a ton of times, so it doesn't really bother me. I'm going to put an eyelid over the top here. You can see you can kind of join that eye over here. And now I want her to look off to the side because I do want to conceal some of this line work over here. So let's just put in some upside down rainbow shapes. I'm going to leave those little catch lights in there. And then I'm just going to shade in this little bit just so I know that that's a dark area. So there's one eye. Let's keep this eye the way that it is and just connect it. Another little leaf shape. Let's put that in there like that. I'm going to put the eyelid on top this time. That way I can work with the lines, not against them. And I'm just going to put some more little catch lights in there. Now catch lights are just those little highlighted white areas that you get when you're when there's a little bit of light hitting your eyeball. The more like white that you leave in this area, you come back, you put a little white paint pen in this area, it can look like little sparkly twinkly eyes. So that's pretty. Now the next thing I want to do is take a triangle shape and just outline the nose. It doesn't even have to be a perfect triangle. I just want to outline the nose, and I do want to create this little circle out of the little line that we've already got here. And then just because we're going weird and abstract with it, let's just put some more circles on top. All right, so we've got this shape here. A lot of the time I like to work with the lines instead of around them and over them. So let's just use this and let's just make it more of a capital M shape and close off the bottom with a straight line. Then I just want to fill that in. Underneath, I'm just going to kind of make it a little askew, put a little parallel line underneath and then an upside down rainbow, and that's going to be the bottom of her mouth just there. Let's put some circled cheeks in. I'm going to put a little stripe detail in there just for fun. And then I'm going to put an oval shape on this side just because I don't want it to be too matchy-matchy from either side. That's the point of being abstract, right? I'm going to close off this ear here. I want to close off this one as well. And I will actually keep these the same on either side. Just putting a little detail in there. Honestly, any kind of lines in the ears is inferring that there's an ear. It doesn't have to be exact or precise. Now, I like to put eyeliner on these ladies. I don't know why. So I'm just going to draw a line kind of mimicking the top of that eye shape and then just flick it out. And then I'm going to draw another line on top and this will be filled in as well. So let's just color that in so I know. Now let's give them big eyebrows. Well, she's gonna have one big eyebrow. I want this eyebrow to come around here. You can see that when I like to create a bit of harmony, I will use a lot of the same curves to reference what I'm drawing next. So you'll see that this curve is in line with this curve, in line with this curve, in line with this, and then I've taken it up a little bit at the top. And let's give them some diagonal line stripes. And this is what I mean about turning the paper. I actually find it really hard to draw diagonal lines like this. I like to pull them down. So I'll turn the page completely upside down, and that way I can work with the way that my wrist just likes to be. Now, I don't want to give her an eyebrow on this side because I don't think she needs it, but I do think she needs lashes. So we always add lashes. I'm, again, referencing the top of that line. I'm going to put a line on top. And now I'm just going to put triangle shapes on here. And these will kind of infer lashes, but obviously they're not going to look like eyelashes. She might look like a clown at this point, but it all just comes down to personal preference. You can take these ideas and run with them and change them for the shapes that you like to draw or the doodles that you like to do, the Zentangling. I feel like this abstract works great with that. Now, let's give her a hairline. I'm going to just cut off the top of her head here. She's going to look like she's got really small choppy bangs. I like to put an M when I'm drawing these fringes or these bangs, just because I like to break them up. I feel like if they're just a straight line, it might look like a little yarmulke. So I just want to put that in there so it looks like her hair's kind of broken up a bit, and really it's just an M. Let's put a little crown on her head because that's the one that I did in the example and I actually really like it. I'm just going to actually put a little yarmulke on now and just cut off this little bit here. And I'm going to do the same triangle shapes we did for the eyelashes and just pop them on the top of her head. So she's got a little crown. Now, these little areas down here, the way that I've drawn these little facial features, I kind of want to just put them back up here. So we've got the little M mouth and the little upside down rainbow U shape. We're just going to put a triangle for the nose and two little leaves out here with some eyelids. And she's going to have a little face resting on top of her crown. And let's give her a mad side eye. Like, who is she looking at? Who is she, though? And just for fun, I want to connect these down to the points. So let me just put a point there. Let me connect that one to there. Let me connect this one to here. Let me put that eyeball all the way out there and put this one. Let's put a squiggle in that line there. All right. So I think a lot of it's pretty much done. If you want to put a neck in or something fun, you could just draw kind of a rectangle. You would imagine that the rectangle would finish there, but you don't need to put that in because I'm just going to keep her face shape the way it is. I think I like that. And now I'm going to put little circles just for shoulders. These are all optional details. You don't have to put these in. And then I want to put like a little triangle down here as if she's starting to have a body, but we don't really need to give her one. And let's just put some more little rectangles under here for arms. So she kind of looks like a robot. Very interesting looking robot. Now you can get a stencil and help yourself out with some of these shapes. I like to freehand it because we're working abstract. What does it really matter anyway? That is a lot of the detail that we're gonna add. I don't think we need to go any further than that. Right, now I've got a Zebra disposable brush pen here. I feel like this is oil-based too. I think they call them a sign pen. They're just a very, very hard tipped brush pen. I like to use a brush pen because I like a lot of line variation in the widths and the styles of the lines, like brushstroke lines. And I'm gonna outline all the things I just did pressing harder in some areas and then resting up in some others, filling in the blacks where I want to fill in those blacks, and just outline everything so then I can erase all that pencil lines. Obviously, if you've done this in pen, you don't need to go back and erase, or if you want to keep some of that graphite in there, you can do that. I've also got an example where I just did the whole thing in graphite and did the background in watercolor, and I shaded with the graphite as well, so I thought that was a nice little technique, and I'll show you all the examples at the end that I've come up with, all using exactly the same principle. A tip when you're working with the brush pen, it really is about the pressure you add. So if you press harder, you're going to get a thicker line, and then if you press softer, it's going to taper off to a more fine point. So anything that is a fine point, just ease up on the pressure of your brush pen, and I find that will give you a nice effect. Alright, so I've erased all the working lines underneath, and you can see we're left with a very graphic black and white image. Obviously this is completely fine to put in your journals. I like a bit of color, so let's just choose some Copic markers and color it in a little bit. Alright, so I've chosen a violently unusual color palette to do this one in, but you know what, it's all abstract, so let's make the colors abstract too, right? Now I wanted to just say one thing. I do like to go back over the top of this. This isn't done for me, but I would go back over the top of it with some gel pens. Now I think a lot of us are used to using maybe just a white gel pen, but if you've got your Sakura jelly rolls and your Sakura souffle pens, I'd encourage you to grab those out too. All of those, remember when you used to be in high school and you get sets of gel pens and you thought you were the coolest thing ever? Use all your gel pens when you're going in and putting all the details. I love the Sakura souffle because it comes out very opaque over the top. It goes on kind of clear, but then it dries really opaque, and it gives you these really fun contrasts in color. So I do like to go over with the gel pens. I'm not going to do this entire one, but I'll just show you what I mean. So I've got a Muji pen here. I would go back in and add all my little doodling and Zentangling in some of these areas with a gel pen, because it's a lot finer detail, and I think that's where you start to build up a lot of depth. So maybe in the hair you'd want to do some lines. I do a lot of lines everywhere basically, or dots and polka dots and checkerboards and stripes and you know, all that fun stuff that we just like to doodle on the side of our notebooks. I'll put them into illustrations because you spend hours doodling them on the phone. You might as well use that skill. If you feel like anything needs to be punched out, you can go back in with the white. I do like this pen. It's honestly, it's probably the best for opacity when you're using a white pen, the Uniball Signo in broad. I just don't like how broad the tip is. I wish they do a finer one, but it doesn't work as well on textured papers. It works really well on really smooth papers, but I think it's called Angelic, the finer one. But I do have a bit of an issue with that when working on textured paper. So for now, because I've got this textured paper, I will just use the broad. I'll just show you what I mean about the Sakura souffle going on really gel-like and, you know, kind of see-through, and then drying really opaque. It's kind of hard to see, but you'll see it as I speed the video up. When it dries, it just becomes really opaque, and it's not a true reflection. The cap color, it is it suggests what the color might be at the end, but they actually dry kind of pastel and sometimes a little fluorescent. This one's a lot more fluorescent than the other colors. You can also go back in with your Copic markers in the different shades of the colors that you're working with. You can add some shadows and details and doodling in with that. Now you can see at this point there are still those working lines underneath because I did choose that smoky grey color, and unless I was going to draw over those areas with darker colors, you're still going to see that poking through. But I actually don't find a big problem with that when I'm working in my journals, and I think sometimes because your eyes take in an image as a whole, you don't typically see that when someone glances at your work. Obviously if they're looking for it, they can see it, but I don't think it's something to stress about. And like I said, you could use a water-soluble ink to stamp it in, or you could just use a very light color and draw your details on, then get rid of it. Now you can see this green is starting to dry here, so you can see how opaque it gets. I'm just going to put some little yellow dots in these black areas, just so you can see that these Sakura souffle pens are really something special. I will say that if you hold them down for longer on the page, you kind of get like a raised effect. I guess that's why they're called souffle, because the souffle rises, right? I don't know anything about cooking, but that's the souffle effect. And last bit of detail that's completely unnecessary, but if you really want to take it to that place, just give your face a bit of some shading just around the edges, just darken it up a bit, give some depth, or you know, put some makeup on her if you want, or him. This robot doesn't gender identify, so anything goes. I just go in with some Faber-Castell Polychromos. They are my preferred pencil to use because they're oil-based and they don't provide a waxy resist like other pencils that I've used in the past. And now that's just a bonus for mixed media. Obviously, any pencil you want to use is completely fine, and these pencils can be quite pricey. I got the deal of a lifetime, and the poor woman at the art store didn't realize they were on that sale, and she tried to persuade me to buy something else, and I was like, no, thanks, I'm fine. So I felt bad for her, but you know what, I really needed to try them, and they really are my favorite pencil. I'm just looking at it now and my eyes kind of went cross-eyed for a second. I don't know why, but I think I'm part Siamese. This is so funny, when my eyes went cross-eyed, that crown kind of looked like a crab. So I don't know who this is. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but she's giving me a bit of a crab crown, so maybe she's like the queen of crabs. I don't know. Alright, now I want to call this done, so I'm actually going to bring in my examples here and just show you some of the ways that you can use exactly the same technique and get a few different variations. Here you can see one that I've done all in watercolor. I've used the same zebra sign pen, I've gone in finer with the details, added a few lashes, but it's exactly the same as the one that we just did. I've just colored it with some loose watercolor, because I feel like if you've got something pretty structured, it's nice to juxtapose that with a coloring style that's very, very loose and free and easy. I've also colored one in with Copics, and you can see the pen work I did there. This is some more of those Sakura Souffle pens, and they're just so gorgeous on darker backgrounds. I feel like sometimes we reserve them for black paper or toned paper, but you can totally use them on white paper and things that you've, you know, Copic colored or watercolor. They're going to work beautifully over the top. So Sakura Souffle is something you might want to check out if that's something you're interested in. If you do a lot of Zentangling, a lot of doodling. This skin tone here, I've just recently discovered that maroon is a really beautiful deep skin tone. I've got this example here, and I'll show you how to do this in another video when we use this stamp. This is another stamp example, but this is the E77, the maroon in the Copic Chow, and I've used the Polychromos cream color, and I've used the Polychromos Payne's gray for the shadows. Now the shadows, I like to use a cool dark, because I feel like that works well with dark, deep brown, rich skin tones. And when you're pulling out highlights, I got this trick from makeup artists when they're putting highlights and you know, powders on dark-skinned ladies, that they put a banana powder or a yellow setting powder, or pull out highlights with maybe a gold highlighter on the cheek to bring a lot of warmth and vibrancy and richness back into the skin. I find that if you use a white, it sometimes can look a little bit ashy. So I'd encourage you that if you're trying some of these gorgeous deep-skinned girls, that you try highlighting with a light yellow, a light cream, and see if that doesn't bring a bit more life to the skin. Anyway, that's a little off topic for now, but that is the gorgeous new deep dark skin tone that I found, the E77, the maroon. Love it. I still love the light walnut, but I'm loving the maroon too for an even darker, richer tone. This is the one that I told you I did in graphite, did all the shading in graphite. I actually just switched the eyes up, but it's the same principle. I put a bit of a different hairline in, kept it a little more simple, and then I simply went around the edge with some Daniel Smith watercolors. This is in Shadow Violet, and it kind of looks like the Moon Glow, but just a little bit different. Beautiful granulation. I find that this is a really, really nice effect as well. And I've actually done the same thing on a different stamp. Now this is one from the Unbothered set, just to show you that you don't have to use this stamp, you don't have to use my stamps, you can do it to any face that you've got, and it'll still be a fun little technique to try out. This one I actually think looks really, really fun in its own way that's completely different to this. So I'd encourage you to try it with your own sketches. I'd encourage you to try it with the stamps that you already have. If you have the stamps that I'm using, that's great. You can follow along, do a carbon copy. I completely encourage it for the sake of learning, but if not, take the techniques and try it and adapt it to whatever suits your fancy. And yeah, that's lesson 1 in the stamp series.